witnesses for being so generous with your time. I want to take a special moment to thank Chairman Royce, Ranking Member Engel for calling this hearing. I will echo what others have said. I hope this is the first of a series of hearings to understand what has happened and, more importantly, to understand how we will respond to it. But I would also add my voice to calling for an independent commission to investigate the Russian efforts to interfere in our elections and how that would play out. To the panel, looking backward and given what we know so far about Russian efforts to interfere in our elections, what our capacities are, and to figure out how to go forward, you always have to look back. If you were to counsel, and 20/20 hindsight is always wonderful, to counsel if we had only done X, Y, and Z, are there things that we could have done in hindsight that might have thwarted their efforts in this past election that would be useful going forward?
Well, I would quote Jonathan Ayal, who is the head of the British Defense Ministry think tank, RUSI, in a quote 2 years ago or 3 years ago, actually, in the Financial Times, is that for 25 years, we told the East Europeans that they were paranoid, didn't understand what was really going on, and that Russia was just a normal country, and now we have to admit those East Europeans were right.
Ambassador Bloomfield.
I don't know what we could have done differently in the past, but I do know that as we go forward, if we have more object lessons, such as President Ilves just gave us, if we're still saying, why didn't we take corrective measures in 2017 when we were focusing on the issue, and why are the Russians still able to pollute the information space in the information era, we will have failed. So we've got work to do.
If I extend on that and more on your testimony, and let me thank all of the witnesses. Your written testimony was extraordinary across the board and very helpful as we prepared. But Ambassador, you talked about the need for, looking forward, good governance, making sure we're standing strong. Thoughts on what we can do, specific steps, how we move that forward?
Whatever is done next, if there's investigations of Russia, if there are special investigations, never lose sight of the bar that you're aiming toward, which is an American standard of ethics, transparency, accountability, and justice. And the founders said, toward a more perfect union. We know we're not perfect, so we're not holding ourselves up to be better than anyone. We're trying to get better ourselves. But if the world sees us doing that and trying to hold ourselves to a standard above partisanship, then I think we will have more influence and power in the world, and that Putin will be guilty of being a bad actor. No one will want to do business with Russian companies if they think it's going to bring sort of corruption and coercion and blackmail into their economy. So they're not helping themselves.
So, and I think we've been here a long time. I think it was in response to a question Ranking Member Engel asked of the ability to recognize the difference between the United States and Russia. Ambassador Baer, I think it was you who said it, that we need the President to speak clearly, to articulate that there is a difference in the United States living up to its values, working towards that more perfect union. But Ambassador Baer, I wonder if you have further thoughts on, after several hours here, what we can do in our roles to help articulate that difference.
I mean, I would associate myself with the comments made by Ambassador Bloomfield. I think that it's very important, whatever we're doing, to keep that objective, which is a common and shared objective, in mind. And I do think that an independent commission is the kind of mechanism, the kind of tool that we can use, not only to educate policymakers about what kinds of approaches can forestall future efforts by Russia or others to interfere in our democracy, but also can help American citizens educate themselves about the nature of these attempts to manipulate us through control, through taking advantage of some of the asymmetries that are based on our greatest strengths. The fact that we actually have free and fair elections, unlike the Russians where Putin manipulates the tallies. We have free and fair elections. He can take advantage of that. We have freedom of the press. He can take advantage of that. And I think that's the value, and we should be aiming at, are these constructive objectives that could come out of a fact-finding mechanism.
I'm out of time, and I'm sorry, Mr. Duran, because I wanted to touch onto your comments about pushing back on fake news, but I think all of this comes together as we live up to our values. We continue to educate our public. We need to stay true to those values and stay true to our path. Again, I thank the witnesses very much, and I yield back.
Tom Swazi of New York.